Good morning. Great. Who was here yesterday for the prayer vigil? Raise your hand. All right. Preparing you, we have a very enthusiastic elder who'll be calling you all out for those that didn't come. I'm giving you a heads up. You can pray at home too, but, you know.
So can we raise our hands and say over there?
No, you weren't there. You were somewhere. I'll be somewhere.
Yep.
Working for the Lord. Is that it? What's the song? Okay. I must be slow this morning. Phase. Running circles. You're hot. You guys standing right here, Lynn, where the AC is. Oh, I feel great right now. I'm quit working so much. All right, so we are in the book of Genesis, chapter 46. We have been walking ourselves through the life of Joseph, the patriarch. And he has, of course, been sold by his brothers, into slavery. He ended up in Potiphar's household and was running that well until his wife lied about him. He was thrown into jail for at least 2 years, interpreted some dreams for some people, and eventually he interpreted the dream of Pharaoh to let them know that they had 7 good years of harvest coming, and they had 7 years of famine. And so he was placed in charge of making preparations and laying by in store as they have prospered, as I've said, to kind of make some connections, you know. A little different than 1 Corinthians 16, 1 and 2, but it's the same principle, right? A rainy day fund, if you will, or a lack thereof. So we've got, finally, Joseph messing with his brothers because they mess with him. And he's finally revealed his identity to his brothers and says, listen, I want to know, I got Reuben right here. I've kept your brother in jail for the last couple years. That's been fun. But is Dad okay? Was the last question. He goes, yep, he's doing okay. We'll go back and get him. Pharaoh says, take some animals with you and bring all your stuff, and we'll live in the land of Goshen for a while, for a good long while. And so when they finally revealed to Jacob, also known as Israel, that Joseph, the brother that he loved the most, he thought had died, he's actually alive, and he's a ruler, verse 26 of chapter 45. He's still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. His heart became numb because he did not believe them. When they told him all the words of Joseph, which he said to them, when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived, and Israel, Jacob, said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. So he has one final mission, if you will, before he knows that his time is drawing near to be buried with his fathers. And then chapter 46, before we jump into it, this is kind of is almost a conclusion, right? I told you all that if you were here before, where I wanted to end it, and it was with the death of Jacob. So surprise, he does die. I mean, that's the way of the world, isn't it? Except for 2 people, I think. What are you mumbling, Lisa? Yeah, we do, don't we? Strange. All right, chapter 46, verse 1. Any thoughts, questions, comments? I think I did pretty well last week preaching while being sick. And so Monday I was out, and Tuesday I was basically out. Wednesday I was okay. Thursday I was basically out. And so here I am. I feel awesome. Okay, chapter 46, verse 1. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba. Okay, so this is drilled into my memory from years of trauma bonding with my friends. Beersheba is the southernmost point of Israel's border or territory after the conquest. So this is, of course, pre-Law of Moses, pre-Mount Sinai, whole Moses situation, the wanderings for 40 years, and then finally going across the Jordan in the book of Joshua and taking out all the people that were there. That was the plan. Didn't work out that way because the people said, we prefer to have some slaves. That was their decision. Wasn't a great one, but they did it. So Beersheba is the southernmost point of Israel's future border. So when it's mentioned here in the book of Genesis, who do you think wrote the first 5 books of the Pentateuch, of the Law of Moses? All right, that gets tricky, by the way. It's easy to say that it was Moses because they're called the 5 books of Moses, so that would make a lot of sense, right? But it does get tricky because technically we've got 4 different verses in the Pentateuch, the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, where Moses actually physically wrote something down. And so calling it the Law of Moses, meaning the Torah, the first 5 books, is one of those things that's kind of like just an idiom almost by the first century. And so all that Moses wrote and then the prophets is the entire Hebrew Bible, right? So whether or not Moses actually put pen to papyrus here and wrote all this down, or it was someone that was authorized, if you will, as the secretary for Moses, whatever the case, whatever was written in Genesis 46, and whoever the author was, we'll just say Moses for lack of a better name there, then when they wrote this, Beersheba would not just be a location they happened to pass through, he's kind of giving a landmark, right? It's kind of like if you were coming back here in 1770 talking about D.C. and kind of like where the George Washington Monument is. Now, was the George Washington Monument there in 1770? It was not. But the location that would later be known as the George Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, etc., we kind of know where that is based on our modern idea. So when they give locations like this, like Bethel, for example, or Bethel, the house of God, where Jacob had that vision of the ladder or the staircase to heaven, where angels were coming up and down, like that would be a very important location later, but naming it Bethel then didn't really mean a whole lot until it became Bethel later on. So I say all that to say that when you're reading this, you're given little timestamps, little images of when this would have been written. And when they're passing through Beersheba, it would have been nothing then, but later on, Beersheba would be very important because that's the border, right? That's the bottom of New Mexico before you get into actual Mexico, right? So you kind of have an idea there's a border coming up in the future. So keep an eye open for those kinds of things, and don't let it confuse you too much that the authorship of the date of the book that it was written was not talking about the things before it was written too much. Okay. In Beersheba, they offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Again, this is patriarchy. This is a patriarchal law. It's not the law of Moses quite yet, so offering sacrifices in various places of importance is not a problem theologically. Verse 2, and God spoke to Israel, Jacob, in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. He said, of course, famously, here I am. Then he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. We talked about that last week, right? And what was the main point? That's the Abrahamic promise reiterated from Genesis chapter 12. So we've had this kind of succession, if you will, down the line biologically, going now to Jacob and saying, listen, from your seed, from your propagation, you're going to have a great nation be born unto you. Verse 4, I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again. Kinda, right? And Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. So you're going to die, but I'm going to be with you, which is a great encouragement to know that God himself is with you. I will bring you up again. What do you make of that?
You can have several readings.
Okay.
He's going to come back, that somebody took him up there and buried. Could be that he's bringing him up to a position.
Okay. With a connection to go down with you to Egypt, bring you also up again. Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. Death is in the conversation. We have Exodus talked about. What's significant about that? Anyone remember? It's an extra credit question. What's that, Faye? Okay, remember that, well, we'll read it, but remember, if you've read this before, that the bones of Jacob or Israel were requested to be brought up also with them. And so he's going to die in Egypt, but he's not going to physically remain there. I don't think verse 4 really has an overt spiritual connotation to it. I think it's more physical and literal. Anyone see anything spiritual in verse 4? Yeah. Well, there's that, of course, the comfort of having God with you, and Joseph's there. The reason why I mention all that is because if you'll remember in the first century, we had two popular groups of religious power in Jerusalem. And who were they? Who were the religious elite of the first century? Pharisees and Sadducees. Now, why were the Sadducees sad, do you see? Didn't believe in the resurrection, which is a very fancy religious way of saying they didn't think of it, there's an afterlife. They looked at the law of Moses and all the Hebrew Bible, and they're like, listen, there's no afterlife here. There's no spiritual anything, really, besides where God lives. And so when he's saying, if you do what God tells you to do according to the law of Moses, you'll be physically blessed. You'll have good crops and good harvest that year. And then, people will kind of treat you better than they would otherwise. And so that's kind of it. That's the promise of God. There's no afterlife. There's no eternity anywhere. There's none of that in the Hebrew Bible. Jesus said they were wrong, so they're wrong. But still, when they look at passages that might have a spiritual afterlife connotation to it, they didn't take a lot of stock into that. They also didn't believe in angels, which is wild. Like, how in the world? But who am I? Okay, verse 5. Then Jacob sent out from Beersheba. The sons of Israel, Jacob, carried Jacob their father, their little ones and their wives, in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent him to carry. So they're having a family reunion. Did you guys grow up going to family reunions? Anyone not have a family reunion? Really? Your family of all families?
Not like this is the golf family reunion.
Uh-huh.
Christmas and stuff, we would get together. But
Okay. I think so. My best ever.
yeah, like we didn't have the T-shirt that said golf family. But we did have the family reunions down. We don't do that in the north. I don't think that's
Oh, you're northern? I knew there was something. I knew it. Where? How north?
Well, I was born in Charleston, but my mom.
South Carolina?
Yeah.
Okay,
My mama's
you're okay then.
Is from Ohio.
Oh, one of those.
But I was adopted, so.
Okay, then you're grandfathered in or whatever. You're okay. You're basically a Southern. You got the accent.
I've been here 25 years.
25 years.
I've been here.
How y'all doing?
How y'all know?
Yeah. If you can have a whole sentence and not move your mouth at all, you know you're real Southern. I got one syllable. You want to go back to the Bible? Come on now, Lisa. Where'd our Bible go? You got to restart the whole computer, don't you? I know you can hear me. You got to restart it? Is the live stream down? You shaking his head yes and no? It's a different language? Good. Okay. Oh, great. Apple TVs, no big deal. Hey, all right, if you say so. Okay. I had rabbits to chase, Lisa. I got stories I want to tell about my own family. I don't got many of them.
Explains what he's doing.
All right. So they're traveling and stuff. All right, verse 6. Here we go, Lisa. They also took this is Genesis 46 and verse 6. If you can't see it on the screen, nobody can. Don't worry. Your eyesight's just fine. Open up your Bible and you can follow along if you'd like. They also took their livestock and their goods, which they had gained in the land of Canaan, like the Abrahamic promise said that they would. And they came into Egypt, Jacob and all his offspring with him. His sons with him, so his grandkids, his daughters and his granddaughters, all the offspring he brought with him into Egypt. So here's the fun part. We get to say a bunch of names we can't pronounce properly. Ready? Verse 8. Now these are the names of the descendants of Israel who came into Egypt, Jacob and his sons, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. Let's pause right here. Before we read a bunch of names we can't pronounce correctly, let me help you out, because this helps me out. Whenever I see a long list of names, I'm like, what is the point of trying to figure out how to pronounce these names? What is the deal? The only deal I can make out of it is there's no shadow of anybody's doubt that when you read these names, these are not fictional names. They're real people. And so when you have the author or the penman who's writing these things down, he's telling descendants of these people, hey, your great-great-grandfather, he's one of the guys mentioned here. So this is not some fairy tale, right? If you've read Tolkien's work, The Lord of the Rings, there's a bunch of names that are in there, but they're all fictional, right? When you read this is not just giving you a family lineage for the sake of it. This is him putting himself on a timestamp in history, saying, these are the people that were with Jacob. If you want to know your personal family origin story, here's all your descendants, right? This is Ancestry.com before that was a thing, right here, okay? That's why it's important.
When he says the descendants of Israel,
Yep.
then he mentions Jacob. Is Israel there, like the nation of Israel, or is it talking about Jacob and calling him Israel?
Sure.
It's all interchangeable.
It is, but also, if you see the preface there, like Faye mentioned, when they're reading this, Jacob's dead. Joseph's dead. All the patriarchs here in the family, they've gone. They passed on. They have their own family lineage. This is them tracing it back. So here are the descendants of Israel, meaning the nation who came into Egypt, and then Jacob and his sons. Reuben, the firstborn, the sons of Reuben, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi, which is not pronounced any way close to being correct, but hey, we're English. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, not confusing at all, Zohor, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman, which technically wasn't really a problem yet, right? But it would have been later on, especially after the book of Joshua. The sons of Levi, those are important because they're Levites later, right? Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Judah, that's going to be important. Why? Yeah, I mean, Jesus comes from that, spoiler alert, but there's going to be a prophecy here at the end. Hey, Judah, you're pretty important, but you're a terrible son. Judah and Tamar situation we skipped over in the reading, remember? Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah, but and Onan died in the land of Canaan, so that's, again, giving you a little time stamp there. They've already died in the land of Canaan after Exodus. The sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamuel. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Purav, Yob, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered, Elon. Oh, there's Elon, man. You know what? And Jaleel. These are the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram, together with his daughter Dinah, or Dinah. Altogether, his sons and his daughters numbered 33, which, I mean, come on now. But who am I? All right, sons of Gad, Ziphion, Haggi, Shuni, Ezron, Eri, Arodi, and Arli. The sons of Asher, Imnah, Ishvi, Beriah, and Sarah, her sisters. The sons of Beriah, Heber, and Malchiel. The sons of Zilpah, that's important, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughters, and these she bore to Jacob 16 persons. poor girl. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin. So we know those names, don't we? And to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On, bore to him. We know about them already from the previous context, right? The sons of Benjamin, Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, not the same Naaman you may be thinking of, by the way, Ehi, Rosh, Hupim, and Ard. These are all the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all, poor girl. The son of Dan, Hushim, the son of Naphtali, Jezreel, Guni, Jezer, and Shillem. These are the sons of Bilhah, who Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob, 17 persons in all. Insert poor girl here. Okay. All the persons belonging to Jacob who came into Egypt, who are his own descendants, not including Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. No real issue there with the number. I know everybody freaks out whenever you have 6 and then you have 6 again, right? But it's not 3 of them, so we're good to go. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2. So Jacob was otherwise occupied in prison, being lied about, being a slave. He just has 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob, or Israel, who came into Egypt were 70. So it's important to mention that because, of course, there's a number 7 in there. But also, this is a time stamp before you get to Exodus chapter 1, because a lot happens in the history of the nation of Israel in between this and Genesis 46 up until chapter 50, which is the end. And then you have Exodus chapter 1. And it goes from 70 people to how many approximately left in the Exodus? As many as the sands on the seashore. No, if you're looking for an actual date, we're looking at minimum ballpark for men, 500,000. So 500,000 people. And then if you're trying to estimate everybody, all the people, including those that were kind of half Jewish and kind of half not Jewish, the rabble as they're called in the King James, then you're looking at like 1.5 million people in the Exodus. It's not like a single file line, folks. I'm not sure how you imagine the Exodus in your mind, but it's not a single file line of them just like, da, 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 da. No, it's not like that. It's like we have an entire sea of people leaving. That's why Egypt's like, we kind of liked having 1.5 million slaves to do our work for us, but I mean, I guess if we're going to kill our firstborn, you guys can go on then. So 70 to 1.5 million people between these 2 books. So that's why it's important to kind of bring that forth. So when God says, hey, I'm going to bless you, make your name great, and multiply your seed so it's like the sand on the seashore or stars in the heaven, he wasn't lying. You got 70 people here, which it was just 2, Abraham and Sarah, and they were barren. So what you going to do? Now we have 70. And then in 2 more generations, you're going to have 1.5 million. That's a lot, right? Okay. It's like Miracle-Gro for people. Here we go. All right, questions, comments, thoughts. Again, to remind you, the names are difficult. You can skip them if you really want to, but I wouldn't recommend it because it's part of the fun. It's like, why does God want us to read these names? Because they're real people. Because he knew all of them, and they had souls that are in eternity forever. So try not to skip their names too much. That's my recommendation. All right, anything else? So the family reunion in verse 28. Name tags? Hi, my name is. You can't pronounce it because it's in Hebrew. He had sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to show the way before him in Goshen, and they came into the land of Goshen. Then Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet Israel, his father, in Goshen. He presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Well, yeah, it's been a while, right? Israel, Jacob, said to Joseph, now let me die, since I've seen your face, and know that you are still alive. He thought he's been dead for a long time. And here he is being taken care of by his son. Joseph said to his brothers in his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and will say to him, my brothers, and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me. The men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, as shepherds usually are, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have. And Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? You shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth, even until now, both we and our fathers, in order that you may dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. What do you make of that?
We didn't like the smell.
They don't like the smell, okay?
Joseph was telling him to reply in a broader sense, apparently, and not specify, hey, we got some sheep over here, as long as, with the cattle and everything else. Just put it in a broader sense.
Well, it makes you wonder, like, they were starving to death, right? So they had to go to Egypt to buy wheat, but they got livestock.
I think it's God's way of keeping them separated.
Could be. Also, keep in mind here, you've got sheep, and they tend to like food to eat as well, right? So you can't just slaughter them all, because otherwise you don't have sheep anymore. So they're shepherds. They're taking care of livestock, and they're over here in Goshen where they have food to eat. Anything else?
I think, kind of like what she was saying, it's kind of a way, so they don't want to come to, oh, he's an artist, he's a shepherd, kind of spread out in the population. You want to keep them all separate as food.
Okay, why would that be important? I'm with you, but I want to see how far we can go with that concept of keeping them separate.
I think,
I want them to intermarry.
Okay, why not?
God's purpose. He says that his Christ will be coming through.
Okay, in you all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, right? That's part of the Abrahamic promise, Genesis 12, 1 through 4. But if you, dilute's not the right word, but if you intermarry too much, then you have an unclear succession from God's promise to Abraham going all the way to Jesus. That would make Matthew and Luke's job really, really hard when they have to write down by inspiration who Jesus was born through, right? Luke, you've got Mary's lineage, and Matthew's, you got Joseph's lineage, if you didn't know that, by the way. So although Joseph technically wasn't the father of Jesus, we still, for that religious right, would be significant. Okay, questions, comments? Yeah.
So you get to this by the fact that they despise shepherds.
I mean, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, you just sort of lost me in that.
Okay.
And then I realized what you were saying, and I said, okay, so I think you might be.
Okay, so my question really begins with, why would Joseph be so particular to his father about when Pharaoh says, what do you do for a living? How can we use you in Egypt? He goes, you can't use me at all. We've already got our profession as shepherds. We'll be over here away from the Egyptians. Thank you for your support, but we're going to be over here. So then the question begged, why would they want to be separate? And that goes to what Faye and Ted were saying. You've got a lineage problem here through the Abrahamic promise that we are keeping in the back of our minds. That's how we got there. Is that better? Yeah. Oh, great. Clay?
Go back to verse 16 through 26. You sort of touch base on this.
Yep.
But of all the names in the Bible, there's millions and millions and millions of people that walk this earth, including us. There's very few names that are in the Bible. And so you touch base on how important these names are.
Yeah.
They're extremely important because if God decided that these names need to be put in here,
Right.
then we need to know.
Yeah, for sure. At least read them, right? I mean, we're not going to have a personal connection to many of these biblically. Like, we're not going to have the great chronicles of Haggai, for example. But having the names in here by God, reading them is significant. And during COVID, so what COVID looked like in...
If you get into Psalms where
Yeah,
David goes, he has He has 3 of them. They talk about 2 of them in depth, but they only say the name, don't even say the name of the 3rd one,
Yeah.
but we know there's 3.
Yeah.
So why, I mean, if these names are in here, God's put them in here, there's a reason
Yeah, for sure.
for us to know it.
Yeah. I think you might have been out when I mentioned at the beginning why we read the names. And they're there because it tells us for certainty this is not a fairy tale. It's not a myth. It's not just some story to pull some idea from. It's a historical document, or it's a record of who these people were. And they're reading it after the Exodus. They can go back and trace their own lineage through their ancestors to who was actually one of the original 70, right? I mentioned during COVID, I wanted to preach through Ezra and Nehemiah because I'd never preached through those books before. And then it was just me and a camera. It was at 3 o'clock on every Wednesday. We didn't have midweek studies. And so I was like, why in the world haven't I preached Ezra and Nehemiah more often? This is a great account of them coming back from captivity. And then I got to Ezra and Nehemiah and realized, oh, they're going to tell you every person that came out of captivity. So here I am. In the middle of COVID, people are trying to watch at home, and I'm just like struggling through chapters and chapters of names. So again, to remind me and to remind you why the names are there. They're significant, but also keep in mind it's a struggle for us sometimes, right? Okay, verse 28. He had sent Judah. No, I read that already. Here we are, verse 33. Nope. Oh. Chapter 47, here we go. So Joseph went in and told Pharaoh, my father and my brothers with their flocks and herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan. They are now in the land of Goshen. And from among his brothers he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? It's almost like Joseph knew what Pharaoh might say. And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds as our fathers were. They said to Pharaoh, we have come to sojourn, travel through the land, for there is no pasture for your servants' flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. And now, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them settle in the land of Goshen. And if you know of any able men among them, put them in charge of my livestock. So they don't like shepherds, but they also have livestock. Interesting. So Joseph brought in Jacob and his father and stood him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Just to remind us of simple things here. Verse 7, when Jacob blessed Pharaoh, what does that mean? Biblically. To remind you all the simple things that I'm sure we all know. You know it, right?
His way of saying thank you.
Yeah, okay. So when you say blessed in the Bible, either you mean one of 3 things. One of them is like you are blessed by God, so he bestows upon you some kind of like merit, some kind of favor, right? That's kind of grace explained. Unmerited favor is one of the ideas. If you are blessed, if you are someone like Psalm 1 and then Matthew 5 for the Beatitudes, it's kind of like happy are you or better off are you if this is the person that describes who your character is, right? And so also the word blessed is used in the sense of the idea of just giving thanks. So you have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you have very few things actually between all 4 that are similar and told in the same way. But one of them that's very, very similar is the institution of the Lord's Supper from the last Passover meal that Jesus partook from. And so when you've got him taking the bread, he gave thanks for it in Mark and John, and he blessed it in Matthew and Luke. So what does it mean? Sometimes when you're blessing something, you're giving thanks for it. So when you bless the food, before you eat, what do? You're giving thanks for it, thanking God for the food that you have. So when Jacob blessed Pharaoh, I don't necessarily see some kind of spiritual, because I'm God's man, I will now lay my hands on you and bless you, Pharaoh. It's more like, hey, thanks for saving us. We would have died otherwise. You've given us the best of the land. Thank you for your grace here. Pharaoh said to Jacob, how many are the days of the years of your life? Wouldn't you like to know? And it's a very polite way, I guess, to say, are you close? Like, how old are you? Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of my years of my sojourning are 130 years. Holding up pretty good for a 130-year-old guy. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the years of the life of my fathers, ancestors, and the days of their sojourning. It's interesting to hear him talk about his life because, remember, this is the same Jacob who has got some hip problems because he wrestled an angel of God and almost won. So the angel had to cheat and pop his hip out of socket. This is the guy who, with his mother, had a conspiracy against his own older brother Esau and put a hairy coat on him from an animal to trick his dad to bless him instead of Esau, his older brother, who should have gotten the blessing. This is the guy who tricked his brother Esau to sell him his birthright for a bowl of stew because the guy was so hungry he thought he would die if he didn't have the stew right then and right there. And he's saying, few and evil have been the days of the years of my life.
It didn't even end there.
No.
I tricked him. He went through working for Rachel.
Well, he sure did. And I don't know. Do you think that he didn't know that he was marrying Leah? Or do you think he's like, well, I don't know. It just sounds like Jacob to me to be like, I know it's not her. But here we are. Anyway, a few in evil have been the days of the years of my life. Jacob blessed Pharaoh, verse 10, and he went out from the presence of Pharaoh. Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt and the best of the land in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Joseph provided his father with brothers. Nope. Come on, don't walk up now. Joseph had provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with food according to the number of their dependents, which, by the way, tomorrow is tax day. So think about your dependents as we close out this morning. Boo. Okay, we'll pause here for the day. We will close out the life of Joseph next week, Lord willing. I want to give a shameless plug to our ladies on Wednesday nights. We have this lady, what's her name, Auburn or something like that? She's okay. She's teaching about the ladies of the Bible, which is the thing that I plan to do next. So if you are at all able to be here on Wednesday nights, and that's a topic that interests you, and you are a lady, then I would plug her class just so you know that is going on. So we will pick up here verse 13, Lord willing, next week. Thank you for your time and your attention. And Blaine's preaching today, if you don't know. And so we wish him well in presenting God's word.